managers or product owners, they are essentially owning like the vision of the products. They are representing the customers because they know what the customers want. So I explained like it might be important to have a bit of technical knowledge now and also try to be certified, but it's not that necessary. I wasn't certified when I got my first role, so you can definitely get a job without being certified if you can demonstrate like experience. But these days, people want to employ people who can bring value to them, and you need to have a good understanding. You don't just want to learn. Oh yes, I know Agile. I know what Scrum is. It's not just all about that. You need to like understand the skill sets it takes, understand the software, and like how to do all that planning. For example, the software that I've shown everyone how to use, or like what it looks like basically. You need to be able to have an understanding of all those things because in your interview, those are things that they will be testing you on.
Hello everyone. My name is Korede Alade, and just want to say welcome to this session where we'll be having some sort of project management after class to just take you through what it means to be here and also what a day in the life of the manager will look like during the life cycle of that, and just help you to get a feel of it to see if this is something you're interested in. So first, the way this session is going to go is I'm going to sort of explain a bit more, tell you about myself and my journey into project management. And then I'll then do an introduction into what project management means and what it means to deliver a project. And I'll explain some of the methodologies in project management, just to give you like basic knowledge, like a foundation for this class. And then I'll then go ahead to explain my role as a project manager, what your role as a project manager looks like, and then use it to sort of explain a full life cycle of the project to you, what you'll be doing as a project manager during the life cycle of that project. So we'll go through that case study together, which I hope will be very interactive, and then we'll finally end the Q&A session. So a bit about myself. I'm a project manager and I work in SaaS environments, so software environments, on tech and digital products. And basically I focus on SaaS implementations, so software implementations, as well as go-to-markets project management. So anything that is just involved in the cycle of in the life cycle of a product, I'll be involved in it as a project manager, managing the end-to-end. So, and I manage a product and tech team across Europe, North America, and Australia to deliver software solutions to top universities across the country. And I have led teams in my experience to launch different features for up to 3 software products. And I've also launched various digital products and other type of software projects like implementation projects. And I'm PMP certified, so basically I do understand, and so I understand processes as well as have the experience to be able to take you through this class. So my journey to project management was basically I started my career as a lawyer. So I did my undergrad in law and I practiced law for 3 years where I focused on corporate law. So in terms of mergers and acquisitions as well as tech law. And because I was working a lot with tech companies, I became very much interested in the product as opposed to just managing the side of things. Like I'm someone who prefers to work on something tangible that you can sort of like see the end result. And so I did that for 3 years, and I then decided to like go into a role that would have a more direct effect on the product itself. So I decided to do an MBA, and while I was taking my MBA, I also was taking courses, like basic courses on project management to kind of like understand the basis of it. So I took the project management course while I was also doing my MBA. And while I was doing my MBA, I had an elective in project management. So it also like gave me a better knowledge of it. And I knew that that was something that I wanted to do and decided to switch careers completely. And then I did a bit more learning on the industry, the tech industry itself, understanding what it means to develop a software, the entire software development life cycle, product life cycle, and all of these things. So I did further learning on the industry, and then I started to apply for roles when I felt like I had a good understanding of what it meant to be a project manager in my experience. And then I was able to successfully secure a role, and I've not looked back since then, basically. So that's basically my journey into project management. So so we're going to start explaining what a project is. And basically a project is a temporary endeavor that produces a unique product, service, or result, and it must always have a start and an end date. So as opposed to like the daily operations of a company where there's something going on day to day, the project is something that has to have a start and a finish date. And at the end of the project, there has to be something you're delivering. So it's either a product, a service, or some sort of result. And so that is what you would then deliver to the company that you're working for. And so it's not a permanent thing, it's more temporary that you do in an organization. So every day of your life, honestly, there are different things that you've done that have come from of the project if you think about it. So that's why I think that it's relatively an easier career to understand because in your day-to-day life and planning, you are doing the work of a project manager some way. And then, yeah, so basically it's a series of tasks that you need to complete to be able to reach a desired um, task. And then what's project management? So project management itself is just the application of all the knowledge, the methodologies, the tools, because there are different tools, skills, techniques that you need to have to be able to deliver this product or as a project manager. So project management is just that, the application of all of that knowledge, all that process, all that methodology to make sure that you're meeting the requirements and delivering that project outcome. Um, so while delivering a project, there's a life cycle that the project will have to go through. So basically, from since the project has a start date and an end date, there are different stages that the project will need to go through before it comes delivered, basically. Um, so the basic ones that you have is the initiation stage, which is just the stage where you're launching the entire process of the project. It's the phase where you're basically talking about the goals, the deliverables, you're trying to understand what the project is about, you're gathering all the information and get about the project, understanding what resources you need, the project you need, and sort of like building like a case study or even a business case for why the project should happen. So it's just a starting phase of where you're putting things together. And that is the stage where like you will develop your project charter, which is like a document that has like a summary of what the project is about, what the goals are, what the deliverables are, how much you're planning to spend on this project, what resources you need, but on a very like high level. So all of this information will then be put into that document to become a project charter, which will then be approved by the seniors or the senior stakeholders to then officially like kickstart the project. Now, after that stage of initiation, the next stage you have is the planning stage. Planning stage is basically where you're making plans as to like how you want to achieve this project goal. So you're putting everything you need to put in place. Um, so and it's a very, very important stage in project management because that is basically like if you're not planning a project well, you most likely fail. So every single plan is put into place at this stage. And whether it's a schedule, a communication plan, even your budget, like all of these things, that is the stage of the planning. What's gathering your team together, like all of these things, you're planning, you're doing it in the planning stage. And the next stage is the execution and the monitoring and controlling stage. So they're two different stages, but they happen at the same time. So they happen concurrent, but simultaneously sort of. Um, so basically the execution stage is where you're executing this the tasks that you're meant to do, the deliverables you're meant to do that you've already planned. You're basically now putting it into action and executing it. At the same time, you're monitoring and controlling. You're monitoring that it's progressing the way you expect it to progress. You're monitoring the budget, you're controlling the scope to make sure that things are not going out of scope. You're managing the schedule and the time, and you're also managing and controlling the resources. So all of these things go hand to hand while you're doing your execution and monitoring thing. So basically, as a project manager in the state, you're just monitoring the progress and making sure that your team is executing as they're supposed to and removing any obstacles that they might have while delivering that project. And finally, you then have the closing stage where you're basically winding down the deliverable has been completed, you have a final product, you're just handing that over to the client, winding down, doing all your lessons learned, or like having the final meeting and the final reporting of the project. That's basically what happens in the closing stage. So next up, we then are then speaking of like the project management methodology. So methodology is just what process are you going to be using? So there are different processes or that you can use in delivering your projects in project management. And that depends sometimes on the industry or even the type of projects because you can't use the same process for every single type of project or even clients. So sometimes it's better to use one process over the other, and that's part of your skill as a project manager to be able to tailor each project to a specific process that works best for it. So first you have the predictive process, which is also known as waterfall or traditional process, or traditional methodology rather. And basically it just as it says predictive. So you can predict each stage. So you're following a series of steps and they're directly to like clear set of expectation, resources, goals, and you're not likely to change any of those things. So basically, everything is planned up front. There's little or no allowance for change, and it's highly controlled and highly full of documentations, basically. So that is what predictive is, and you mostly see those type of methodology in like construction or things that the processes are very set that to move away from those processes we need to have the project, very especially very like regulated industries, you would see more of predictive methodologies or waterfall methodologies being used. So you're following a series of steps and there's little allowance for changes, basically. The next methodology is agile, and agile basically is you being able to, so it's the opposite basically of predictive. So you can do a little planning, but planning is not really done up front. It's more flexible and it's more adaptable to change. So it embraces change throughout the process and the stakeholders or your clients are carried along throughout the process. They're giving feedback throughout the entire process. And you have the teams who are even self-organizing. So more power is given to the team to kind of like manage how they want that project to go in some sort of way. So it moves quickly, it allows for flexibility, and it adapts quickly to changes. And you usually see more of this in like software projects or digital projects or some projects that you need a lot of iteration or a lot of feedback from the clients. And there are different like types of um, processes even on that agile. Like you have Scrum, Kanban, extreme programming, skilled agile, and all the rest. But I think in this session we'll probably just focus on Scrum and Kanban. But basically, those are like some of the examples of like agile processes that you have. And finally, you have the hybrid process. Hybrid is just a combination of both. So there's sometimes that some projects you might have um, cases where you can do like pre-ordered set of work, and then some places can have an agile set of work. And I think this usually even happens in some software projects where, for example, the creation of the product can be very agile, but the part where you're implementing the software can be very, very better for predictive kind of because implementation sometimes might have like 5 steps to take. So in that instance, you'll be able to use an hybrid method combining both predictive and an agile methodology. So basically, just to give you a little more in depth on agile principles because this is more of a tech product management class. So the principles of agile basically explains that you're prioritizing individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And what that means is your team values interacting with your customers and understanding what they want and delivering that to them, as opposed to just using processes and tools, because it would have more effect on the product. Because Agile came to being um, as a result of the fact that when using predictive for software project management, for example, they found out that many times after delivering the product, the customer absolutely hates the product, but doesn't like the product. And to avoid that waste of time and resources, planning and doing all the projects in a predictive way, and then when you deliver it to the customer, they hate it. That's why Agile came in to allow the customer to be very much more involved in the process and allowing changes easily so that the end product is actually something that the customer likes or needs in their business. Because if they don't like it, then basically your project has failed. That is why you're using, that's why Agile principles really like put into place. And so therefore like the prioritization of individual interactions with the customers and the processes. Then the second principle is having a working software as opposed to comprehensive documentations. So in traditional project management, you see a lot of documentations, a lot of planning, and different variations of like documents that you would have to put into your project management plan. But for Agile, it's more of can we see a working software? Like, can we see something tangible, and how soon can we see that tangible results? So that's why this software is preferred over like comprehensive documents. Then you have customer collaboration over contract negotiation. That's very direct. Say that you prefer, you know, collaborating with your customers as opposed to just negotiating contracts or spending so much time in the negotiation process. And lastly, you have responding to change, than following the plan, which is the basic like difference between agile and predictive method. In agile, you're responding to changes faster, plan like it's obtainable in a traditional way of doing things. And then go into explaining what the characteristics of this methodologies are, so you can have like a better understanding of what I'm explaining. So basically, in a predictive approach, you have the requirements are fixed and upfront, and then the activities that are planned upfront are performed once in the entire product. And then you have a smooth delivery. So it's just delivered once. And the goal of it is to make sure that you're managing costs. Then secondly, you have the iterative, which is that the requirements are more dynamic in nature, like they change in nature. But then you're repeating that process until it's actually correct. So you keep on going back to your customer to say, oh, is this exactly what you want? You to keep on tweaking it till it's actually exactly what the customer wants. And then you deliver that in a single delivery. And then the goal of it is basically the correctness of the solution, basically.
In terms for incremental, for example, like I was giving the example of your Apple phone, they're delivering to you. I remember the last launch that they had, the updates they had made updates to the calculator, they had made updates to like different features, but you were already using the calculator anyway. But it's just a bit better now. So essentially, the essence of incremental is to deliver them in smaller portions so your customers can see value immediately. They're already paying you for the service, but then you then keep on making it better. for them to use or keep adding more features or keep adding more things. That's more incremental. And then agile is basically also dynamic. And then you're repeating it until correct. You're using frequent small deliveries, and then you're getting customer value immediately. Um, so that is basically like how I would differentiate like what's the different what the characteristics of the different methodologies will give you when you're achieving or executing a project. Um, just a bit more on agile because we're focusing on tech and because the session the study I want to give you has a part that involves agile and I want you to be able to understand the things I'll be talking about. So in agile, there are processes or there are roles, there are different roles in agile and different ceremonies that have to happen in agile. Uh, and in the methodology called Scrum. So Scrum is a process where you're executing parts of the project in short um sprints, basically. A sprint is essentially like a time box period. Let's say okay, I want to release a mobile banking app. But I have 10 features that I want to develop. And these features, there are like five things I need to do under them. And then you're saying, okay, I want to develop two features in 4 weeks, for example. That's one sprint. And your team will focus on that, making sure that it happens. And then once that you go back to do another sprint, you pick two more features focusing on that. So it makes it more like a focused approach so that your team can focus on what they need to do and what they need to get done. So for Scrum, there are different terminologies that you need to know. So the Scrum team consists of like different people who do different things on the project. You have your product owner, who is like your project manager or your product manager rather. The product owner is the person who represents the customer. They're the ones who have the vision of the project. So the product owner is speaking to the customers consistently, and they know what customers actually want in that product, and they're going to be relaying that to you. And I have actually in one of the projects I was able to that I've done before, I was able to execute a role as a product owner. And it just involves you being in communication with the client and making sure that that vision is communicated to the team as much as possible. And then the Scrum Master, you're the one managing everything. Like you're managing them actually the work, you're managing the sprints, you're managing the process of them doing all of that. And then finally, you have the development team, which is your team of coders, your team of testers, your team of business analysts, your team of um, researchers, like whoever is on that team essentially would be your Scrum team or your development team who would actually execute the work on the projects. Now, while this is going on, while when a Scrum is about to happen, there are different things that have to take place. And one of that is called the sprint planning. So the sprint planning is essentially the period where you're saying, we need to develop these features in 2 weeks, for example. Okay, what features exactly are we developing? What is it going? I think maybe I should move it to this so you can understand what I'm saying here. Maybe this might be easier for you to understand. So essentially, you have your customer and your product owner has spoken to the client. The client says, "Oh, I wish, let's say the Apple iPhone," and um, the customer service team has listened to the customers, and the customers have said, "Oh, I hate that I cannot, I don't know, I hate that I cannot use Bluetooth directly to share files to an Android phone, for example, from my iPhone." That is the customer's complaints or a requirement that they wish to have. So the customer team relays that to the product owner. The product owner says, "Okay, this is what clients' needs," and you're then going to put that in a backlog. So your product backlog is essentially the entire requirements that your clients want. I want a feature that does this. I want a feature that does this. I want a feature that does this. I want the calculator to be able to do more complicated maths for me. I want my camera to be able to record without me having to press play, things like that. And then the product owner takes all of that and then puts it in a product backlog. I'll show you samples of all these things. Puts it there and says, okay, team, this is everything the customer wants. This is all the features that the customer wants. And then from that stage, you go into a sprint planning meeting. So essentially, you are meeting team. But the person who will facilitate that session is you, the Scrum Master, who is also a project manager. So in that meeting, you'll be asking your team members, oh, hi, there maybe some of your chief developer's name is Dave. Oh, hi, Dave. How many features do you think, how many days or how many sprints do you think you would need to complete this particular feature based on everything that the client is asking for? And Dave says, typically it takes me like 5 days to do that. Um, and then you're like, okay, 5 days to do that. You put that down, right? Typically, it won't take you 5 days for a feature, but let's just say 5 days to do that. And then you're asking maybe someone from the UX design team, or typically, how long would it take you to iterate this design to get this feature in your, oh, typically it takes me 3 days. You're taking all that information, you're planning it, and you're saying, okay, out of everything we have in the product backlog that has been prioritized according to their level of importance, you then say, okay, how many features are we doing in this sprint? Because you can have up to 10 sprints in the process of developing a product. You can have up to 20 sprints. It depends on how many features need to be developed. And then you'd say, okay, and Dave and maybe Kemi and Tanya, they say, oh, I think we can do um 3 features or 4 features in 3 weeks, right? So you pick it, oh, let's do this feature because it's your team that makes that decision, not you. You're just there to facilitate it. And your team says, okay, we can do this, and they pick that out. Then you put that into the sprint backlog. The sprint backlog is different from the product backlog. The product backlog has all the requirements, but the sprint backlog only has the requirements for that particular sprint. And then your team does the sprint. They do it. They are iterating. They do it for that 2 or 3 weeks that you've planned for the sprint. They have like daily stand-up meetings. Your daily stand-up meetings means every day your team is meeting for 15 minutes and you're asking, oh, what did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And what are the issues that you're facing that I can help you resolve? So Dave can say, oh, yesterday I was able to finally do the profile development feature on the banking app. Today I'll be trying to look test that feature a bit to see that it integrates with other codes properly, for example. And then he then says, I then say, oh, what problems are you facing? And then he says, oh, well, I've been trying to get access to the dev environment of our clients, for example, to further test it on that environment, but I don't have the access codes. I'll be like, oh, not to worry. I'll reach out to the client and make sure that you get the access code. So what you're doing is taking away all the problems that they have because they need to focus on the work. They don't have time to be sending emails. They don't have time to be bothering about all the other things. And so that process goes on and on for the duration of the sprint. And then when all the features have been developed, you then have the sprint review. The sprint review essentially is your demo. So you demo what you've done, what your team has done in that sprint. You demo it either to the product owner or your senior stakeholders or even the customers themselves and they give you feedback whether they like it or not. If they don't like it and they want you to change something, you can then take that issue and put it back again in the, I don't know if my pointer is showing because I feel like I'm pointing at so many things and yeah, okay. And
It's
then
showing.
you take it back again to the product backlog so that it can be part of another sprint. And then once the sprint review is done and the customer is like, yes, I'm fine, it's good, I like it, then you then meet with your team, you have a retrospective. A retrospective is essentially you saying, oh, what did we do well? What are the things we learned from doing this sprint? Was there something that had gone wrong or that we could do better? So, for example, Dave can say, oh, I think maybe next time it might be easier for 2 people to peer program this so that I don't have to always correct your changes. We can correct it together by doing peer programming. We take that we take that learning from the sprint retrospective and make sure that going forward, but using that learning in the future. That's essentially what a sprint retrospective is. Is like lessons learned. What are the lessons we've learned? And then you have a potentially shippable product, like a feature that has already been done. Then you go back and you start that product, that whole process again. You're going back to look at the backlog, you pick it, plan your next sprint, da 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 da. It goes on like that. So that's essentially the agile process until all the features that you want is is done and completed. Now, what is your role as a project manager on a project in tech? The first thing I think is major is stakeholder management and your focus on the customers. You need to be you need to, because you're supposed to bring value to your company, and your customers are the determinants as to whether something is valuable to them. So you need to be on their neck. Like you need to understand them, understand their pain points, be able to communicate that. You need to communicate the progress of your project. You need to show them samples, prototypes, demos. So stakeholder management is so important in project management. Like you need to know how to communicate, you need to know how to negotiate, you need to know how to make your stakeholders kind of like you in a way so that they can vent to you and even allow for a bit of lapses just because you're able to communicate properly to them. So that is a skill that you need to be able to build because they're the ones who determine whether a project fails or actually succeed. You can do everything on time, on budget, and your client hates it, your project has essentially failed. And then the next thing is you need to be able to manage the scope. So if you're in a predictive or an agile process, you still need to be able to manage the scope, track the progress of everything that is being done, track the budget, all of these things. You need to be able to be on top of it because the team doesn't have time. So I put here that be the glue. And essentially what that means is every other person cannot see what is happening holistically. The developer is focusing on his development. The UX designer is focusing on their designs, right? They don't see everything that is happening, but you're the person who sees everything. So you're supposed to be the glue who integrates everything together and make sure that everything works together. Then you're supposed to be a facilitator of the meetings, of the sessions. So project management involves talking a lot. If you're someone who doesn't like to talk too much, it might not be the best job for you because you will be in meetings from morning to evening. You're talking in meetings, you're resolving conflicts, you're looking for solutions with the team. So you're supposed to be a facilitator, help project teams reach a decision because you're not knowledgeable in the field. The best thing for you to do is help them reach a decision. So let's say there are two people who says maybe one developer thinks, oh, I think we should use I don't know, integration testing. And someone says, no, I think we should use TTD instead. At that point, you can't make that decision because you're not going to be seen to be taking sides, but you need to help them reach table grounds to then say, okay, I think can now both agree that we're going to use this method for testing. But you can't be the person to make that decision. You're more of a facilitator and be a negotiator. And negotiation basically involves you negotiating with the client as well as the team, negotiating the time with the team, even negotiating with the functional management of your team members, because you know your developer or your all these people, they have their own managers. You need to be able to negotiate with their managers for their time. Well, I need this person to give me this amount of time on this my project. You're also negotiating with clients. Oh, I'm so sorry. We thought this project was going to take us this part was going to take us 3 weeks, but unfortunately, because of this and that, it would take us 4 weeks instead. Can I get an extension? So you're the person who is doing all the cajoling, all the negotiations, and you have to be very good at it so that everyone is actually satisfied. Then you need to be a coach. You need to coach your team, coach them on areas that they're not sure of, especially when they're new to the process of agile. Then building a great team. I think it's very, very important for your team to love you. Like they need to love you. Because when people on your team love you, they tend to give more attention to your projects because they like working with you. So create an environment where everyone is comfortable, you're motivating them, and you're constantly getting them to improve themselves. And then the next thing that is your role is to remove impediments. For example, the example that I gave that someone could not get access codes to the dev environment for a client, um, you're, the person who is on the project should not have to worry on that. The person who is working on that project, you would do that for them. You're taking away, you're sending all the emails, you're doing all the reporting so that they can focus on the work fully. And then lastly, you need to be able to tailor and respond to change quickly. There are times when you need to, depending on the company that you are, things might change up quickly and you need to adjust to it. So I would say that there's so many other rules, but I think this is like very, very important based on my experience and um, what I've learned so far being a project manager. Now, quickly, we're going to go into the case study and we're just going to run through it for about 10 minutes. So the case study says that Jess has been employed as a project manager at Simplify, a tech company committed to making learning experiences easy and accessible and engaging for the teaching staff and their students. Now, the company plans to launch a new product in the market called S Connect, a software that connects students to teachers together outside of the classroom. And then Jess has been assigned as the project manager on this project to manage the go-to-market project for this product launch. So basically, I'm going to take you like through the steps that Jess would have to go through to make sure that this project is a success in some kind of way. This was just a little bit more detail on the product. So the product is supposed to have an automated process for admin staff, collate student data in one place, have an intuitive user interface and user design, and this project is supposed to be delivered in 6 months, right? Um, Now, the first thing, like I explained, project life is to initiate a project, right? So to initiate this project for um, S Connect, you need to first um, do like research, right? A bit of research into, okay, what problem does this product intend to solve? What is the goal of this project? Who are the stakeholders? And then you're putting that into your project charter. And so, like I explained here, it's more high level information about the project, and then that will be approved by the stakeholders. I'm going to show you a sample quickly. And then under initiation, you also need to identify your stakeholders. Oh, purple stakeholders meeting, my bad. It's just identify your stakeholders. Here, you need to know who are the people. So your stakeholders can be your clients, can be senior management in your institution, can be external um personnel like regulators. For example, if you're in banking, you need to be in touch with regulators because they are your stakeholders. So even if it's in tech, and then you should be able to analyze them and then produce your stakeholder register when you can. So I'm just going to show you an example of what this looks like so that it doesn't look like I'm talking to, like I'm just telling you the things and I'm not showing you an example. Um, okay, all right, just give me a second. I can't seem to find my um web. Okay. Okay, so from here, you can see like the sample project charter where so you can see an example of a project charter. So for example, this is the title. This is just a sample, it's not connected to S Connect, but you can say, oh, project title S Connect. What is the goal of the project? Or the goal is to introduce a software into the market where students can easily connect to their teachers and have access to materials offline. Then you're going to like the general objective, the specific ones. Then you give assumptions. What are we assuming when we're creating? So assumptions are basically like what are those things you consider facts? They might not be true, but you consider them to be true at the point of creating this charter, right? You do all of that, and then you then list your key members of the organization. This is going to be the sponsor, this is the project manager, and then the project manager receives authority from it. Oh, this is what the project manager is supposed to do, because the project charter is what basically assigns authorities to the project manager. And then you're putting in the requirements, all of these things, and then you get your approval. So essentially, it doesn't have to follow a format. Like in project management, a lot of documents don't need to follow a format. You just need to like understand what it needs to contain. Your project charter is you. It's like pitch deck. Exactly. It's like a pitch deck. Oh, tell me about this project. If you give someone that project charter, they can have an idea of what that project involves. Basically, that's what it is. And then you get that project charter signed, and of course, you identify your stakeholders. Now, let me quickly give you a quick like example of what the stakeholder register looks like. I hope I'm not actually taking too much time, because I'm trying to ensure that everyone has like the physical experience as opposed to just talking to the screen. Uh, yeah. This one is a bit complicated, but there are like simpler ways to do it. It's just a template that I had, that one I had used before. So this one was done on Excel, for example, and you can see this is the stakeholder register. You can see the name of so in this part you put their name, their role, or what's their stake in the project. What exactly are they looking for? What are their contributions? For example, this person, the first line, the person is a financier. Um, and then you kind of analyze them based on their power and interest. And then you can see at the end, I put like a communication means, how do I intend to communicate with them? And I put notes by the side, oh, I know this information because it's very senior. So they want more high level explanation. So you're doing that for every single person that you know is coming into contact like with this project, and you're analyzing that, you're analyzing them, and then making notes so that when you need to talk to that stakeholder, you know exactly how to deal with them. Basically, that's what this one looks like. I'll stop sharing this one also, and just go back to my slide. Yeah. Okay. Can we all see my slide again now? Hello.
Yeah,
Yes, we
yeah.
can.
Thank you. Now the next thing is you planning your projects, right? And this is basically you. So now we've done the charter. We've said that this is what we want S Connect to do for students and for teaching staff. The next thing you need to do is then build plan. And in building a plan, you need to collect requirements from you need to collect requirements from the customers. And if you have business analysts on your team, they would ideally be the people who would do that. But if you don't, sometimes you have to. So many times within coming that we don't have business analysts. So many times I have to do that role of collecting the requirements, but you do that together with um, the team members. And for those who have like foundational knowledge of project management, I can imagine that looking at this pathway and food plan project. It doesn't look exactly what you think planning project looks like, but I'm doing it based on my experience. So usually in planning a project, people want to think of a theme of forming their team towards execution. But I like to think of my team early on so that I'm planning the people I need to put on my team, because you're responsible for building the team. You're responsible for looking at who is the best person to do this work. So you plan the scope, you collect the requirements, you define it, and then you can then have a work breakdown structure, or you can simply put that in a project management tool. And I'm going to show you Asana and Jira today, just so you have a feel of what it involves. So you can put all of this um, in a project management tool, or you can put that in a work breakdown structure. I'll go through everything and then I'll show you all the samples so I don't go in and out of my slides. And then the next thing you want to do is think of your team, because your team members are the ones who will tell you how much time it will take them, and you can't really plan the schedule without them. So I like to think of my team early on, and I would advise you to have generalizing specialists on your team. Who is a generalizing specialist? There are people who they have a specific they're specialists in one area, but they are also good at other things, like they have knowledge of other areas. So you can have a developer who is good at his coding, but also has a bit of knowledge on UX design, a bit of knowledge on UX research. And the reason why it's advised to have generalizing specialists is that it helps everyone work together easily, one. And secondly, during times when maybe one team member is sick or falling short or something is happening on your team where one person cannot deliver, someone else can easily like help out, even if they are not like experts, but they can do reasonable work on it. So and then at that point, you're thinking, do I need an external resource? So, for example, I told you, for example, that in my company, we don't have business analysts. But if this is such a big project, I can't collect all that requirements by myself. And I'll be like, I'll tell the company, oh, we actually need to get external resources, or can we get a business analyst on a contract for 8 months to do this project for us for that stage? And then you can also have like an internal kickoff. I like to call it an internal kickoff with just your team to explain the basis of the project so that they can help you then plan the schedule, think of the costs, because you need them to be on to give you advice on it because they're the ones who will do the work. And so, of course, you're planning your schedule. In Agile, you can easily use a roadmap to plan your schedule, but you can break it down further in the project management tools like Jira and Asana. And then you plan your costs. You ask them, for example, how are we going to calculate cost in this project for Agile? Am I going to use an hourly rate? Okay, let's say the developer's time is £200 per hour, or are we going to use a fixed rate, or we're going to charge £20,000 for the developer's time for 3 months. So those are things you need to determine at this stage. You're planning everything, and you can use tools like Harvest, Forecast to like do your budget tracking and all of this. And then risk management, very, very essential. You have to discuss risk with your team. You can't determine risk yourself because your team has more knowledge of the risk that it face. So plan Post the risk with your team and then have it in the risk register. I have a risk register stamp, but I don't think I can share it now because there's no time. But maybe what I can do is to maybe share some of these materials after the class and have them distributed to everyone. And then lastly, you need a communication plan. Like what information am I giving to who? Who am I reporting to? Am I doing a weekly report to the stakeholders? Am I doing a bi-weekly report? I prefer to do bi-weekly reports, but some clients might prefer weekly reports. Am I doing it? How would the reports look like? Is it a dashboard reporting? Is it email? Is it PDF? Am I going to be using analytics tools? Like all of these things, you're determining it at this stage of planning. So I'm just gonna so next we're gonna go into execution. So I think let me explain execution because let me explain execution and then I'll show you all the tools that I mentioned for planning so you can see everything together, right? So for your execution, you're executing the sprints. So the sprints planning session, you're doing that. You're doing the sprints, you're doing the daily stand-up, everything that it involves, and you're repeating that cycle to make sure that S Connect is a success. And they all go hand in hand. They don't follow like a specific or after executing the sprint, and I'll not communicate. No, they're doing everything together. Then you're reporting the progress to the stakeholders, you're doing dashboard reporting, you're checking quality of the so in some projects you have testers, like actual testers who come to test code integrations, appropriate testing I'll be using is quality good, like is the what is the lag time for this product? How long does it take the software to load when I open it? How long does it take me to sign in? How easy is the signing process? All of these things are the quality that you need to check while the sprints are going on. Then, of course, you're monitoring the else, the resources, the time, the scope, all of these things. You're monitoring them as much as possible. Then you're monitoring all of the risks so that if any risk comes up, all the responses that you planned, all the risk responses you've planned, you're executing it, you're making sure you're taking it out all the impediments for your team, you're taking it out. You're managing the team because many times your team members they don't always see eye to eye. So you're managing them, you're managing conflicts, you're motivating them, like you're doing all of these things um for them. So that's what you'll be doing in executing and monitoring. You're basically like following that process to make sure that product is a success. And then finally, you're closing the project. So the post project is not exactly what it would look like if you're listening to a project management class, but I'm giving you an example of what we would do when we're winding down. So now we've developed the entirety of X Connect, and we're doing a final demonstration, a demo to the clients. Oh, this is it. This is what, oh, you can even have a feel of the software. Oh, test it, do this, do that. And then the customer says, oh, it's perfect. And then they sign up on it. You're getting that sign off. And then you train them, train the clients on the customers on how to use it. You train your sales team ahead of release that, okay, this is what you're telling the public that the product does, because your sales team has to demonstrate how the product works. You're doing the software documentation for, because for some software, the companies, your clients would need their developers to integrate it with their own systems. So you need your developers have to develop that documentation that will guide your developers or guide basically on like basic functionality of the software. And you're out to document your FAQs. Like if you go on the site, you mostly see them on all these sites. How do I use this product? How do I use this? You're doing all of that. You're doing all the training activities. If your launching is going to be a big launch, you're planning the event, you're doing marketing, like you're thinking about the marketing campaign, you're tracking how well people are adopting the product, you're doing all of this. And then your post-launch activity, of course, you're getting user feedback. Oh, did they like it? Do we need to do more improvements on it in the future? And then finally, you then close. So that means you do your lessons learned and you document it in your lessons learned register. You do your final reports as if that's actually like your biggest work. Then you're going to do like the entire report of like everything that happened on the project, like a summary. And then you store the project artifacts. Your project artifacts are basically all the documents, everything you came in contact with, you're responsible for it. You have to keep it secure because if something goes wrong with them, you can't trace something back. And then finally, you're transitioning and handing over. So many times when you finish a project, you're handing it over to like normal operations because that software has now become part of the normal operations of your company, right? They can continue handling that, like customer success team, all those people can keep on handling whatever needs to be done. Um, and that's what you would do like at this stage, and you celebrate because your project is finally done and you're finished. So I would that has actually brought me to the end of um this session on what it takes. And I'm just giving some industry advice, but quickly because I promised to share what some things look like. I'm just gonna quickly share oh sorry. Oh my god. I'm just gonna quickly share what Asana and all these things, what they look like in terms of like leading a project, just very quickly. Um my Zoom, I have about 5 minutes to go, but let's do this quickly. Okay, yeah. So you can see this that what I'm sharing now is called Asana. And essentially, you're putting in, so you know when I was explaining you planning a project, you're putting in all that plan into this this software. So for example, at the institution, I want to meet with stakeholders, I want to develop this, I want the charter to be approved. I want to have workshops with students to gather requirements. I want to do your UX design. We're going to do sprints. We're going to approve those sprints. This is just high level because most times they are more broken down, right? And then you have the development stage, you have testing stage, you have marketing, you have sales teams training, like all of these things. And then you are assigning people. You can see, like, I assigned Elizabeth to this task, and I've given her the time when she's supposed to complete it. And I will say whether it's high priority, is low priority, and what's the status of the project, right? And then you can easily like do your reporting from here. You can do a dashboard reporting. It would automatically generate that for you. Now, for the part of developments and sprints, this is what I mean by sprint backlog. So this is a software called Jira that we use for software development, right? And you can see here, I already did a backlog of things my clients or the customers want. They want a profile feature. But note that it is not your job to do this. The product owner that does this. But you basically need to have knowledge of what happens on the back end. So the product owner has put profile features, sign-in features, They would assign it to people. They would explain further in details, what needs to be done in here. So you can put a description, assign it, all of these things. And then when you then want to create your Scrum, your sprint backlog, you can easily just move it right here, sprint. So you can see this is sprint one. I'm saying I want to do develop profile feature in my first sprint. This other sprint, I've not assigned them yet. And I'll say, oh, actually, instead of this one being in Scrum in this third sprint, I actually want to move it to the first sprint. You can move it and it's right there. And this is what your team will basically use to then develop their features and plan their epics and user stories and all of those things. So I'll just stop sharing now because time is fast spent. But I'm just really hoping that everyone is getting okay. I can see some questions coming in. I'll answer that quickly. Um, so finally, I just want to give some industry advice based on my experience and what I think you should begin to think about and look out for. Many people, I know there's the ideology that there is no, you don't need to have technical knowledge, right? And that's why most people transition into it. That's why I transitioned also. But from my experience, I think the way the job market is going, I would advise you to have a bit of technical experience because they are now looking for project managers who are technical project managers, people who actually understand the industries, who can have a conversation about software, who can have conversations about all the things that they need. So learn technicalities where you can. I'm not saying be an expert, but learn it so that when your team is talking, you can understand what they're saying. And also because they will trust you more when they're bringing a problem to you and you can contribute to that problem. They would always go back to you, right? And then you can look for like a niche part of tech if you want. For example, I do product launch and SaaS implementation. I know people who do blockchain and Web3, cryptocurrency, part of tech. I know people who do um, um, AI, artificial intelligence, which is actually what I'm trying to learn now. I want to start learning artificial intelligence because I feel like in the future there'll be a demand for project managers in AI. So now you see roles that it's no longer general project managers. They now look for project managers in this, in this, in this. So find like 2 or 3 areas that you think you love. So I found that in sales and product launch, I do a bit of media production also. Um, and just do all of that. Then you want to keep receipts of all your conversations because your clients would always say, oh, we didn't say that, we didn't say that. Always have that ready. And then add a buffer to your cost and time so that your team has time to like prepare. Then focus on customer satisfaction and ensure that value is actually gotten immediately in your project. And believe that if you can take all these things, you would be successful